Hi guys, I'm Pat from Close Contact. Today I wanted to share with you my idea of how to find new shapes for chords. Because people have asked me about memorizing chord shapes and how difficult it can be to memorize complex or the not standard chord shapes. And I've noticed that for a lot of people, they look at it differently than I do, and I think the way I look at chords might be helpful for some people in the way that I approach in finding them. So here's my. It was a technique I used when I was studying guitar, and I thought I was lazy because I didn't memorize all the chord shapes. I couldn't memorize it. I found it too much information to get into my head. So what I thought was cheating was actually, as I look upon it now, the real approach to finding chord shapes and how chords are actually constructed. So I will quickly run through the system that I use, and maybe it is useful for you as well. So what I did in a very basic environment, if you look at a standard C bar chord, you can find all your notes intervals there. This is the root, the fifth, the root again, and the third. If we move to a major 7 chord, you just drop the root to the 7th, and then you got a 4-note chord, as is used in jazz and fusion, and lots of other music styles. So for me, this is the basis from all my thinking. So the root, the 5th, the 7th, and the 3rd. There's two ways to look at my. Well, it's not my system. It's just the way that I look at it. There's two ways to approach it. Let's do the first one, which is maybe the most revealing of the two. Is I start to look at the bass note on the 5th string, and I move this note up to the next step in the chord. So this is the first, and I move this one to the 3rd. So this is the C, and I move it to the E. Then we have the 5th. The next one in the chord is the 7th. I move the 5th to the 7th on that string. This is the 7th. I move that to the octave to the 1st again. I just assume that you are familiar with the construction of chords. And this is the 3rd. I move that one up to the 5th. So if I move all these notes to the one I just mentioned, you get this shape. So the 1st goes to the 3rd, the 5th goes to the 7th, the 7th goes to the root, and the 3rd goes goes up to the 5th. It's called the drop 2 voicing. It's what I learned afterwards when I was studying jazz. So it's exactly the same chord as this one. We just shuffle the notes around in a very easy way and a very comprehensive way, and something easy to remember for me. We just moved every note one up in the chord ladder. So this is the root in the bass. Now we get the 3rd in the bass. If we do this process one more time, we get the 5th in the bass. So this goes from the 3rd to the 5th. So we're going from the root to the 3rd, and now we move it up to the 5th. We do the same with all these notes. This is the 7th, it goes to the root. This is the root, goes to the 3rd, and this is the 5th, it goes to the 7th. And then we get this. It's a shape I don't use often because there's a big stretch between these two fingers. It's not easy for my hands, but it will come in handy later. So we got, for the same chord, we found another shape here, we found another shape there, but just by thinking, not by remembering, not by something else. We just brought every note up a step in the chord ladder, and we moved from one to the other. If you do this one more time, and I will fasten up the process, we go from the root to the 7th and so forth. And then we get this chord shape, sorry, not this one. The 7th, the 3rd, the 5th, and the root. So this is this shape with every note moved up one position in the chord ladder. We got the 7th in the bass and the root in the 2nd string. So for the same chord, we now found this shape, that one everybody knows, this one, might be new, this one, and the last one. Now here's the thing, if you look at this chord, and we make it into a dominant, we lower the 7th to the flat 7th, we can repeat the process and move all the notes up one step in the chord structure, or, and just come up with a different voicing, or we can start with the voicing that we just found, voicing 2, and just lower the 7th, which is easier, and which the 7 is there, so we lower that one. This is a new shape for our dominant 7 C. We can do this with the 3rd voicing we found, lower the 7th, and here we go, a new dominant 7th shape that you might know, because this is the E shape, this is actually the bar chord with the 7th there. We removed this finger, put it there, and we moved the octave to that string, so it's there. But basically it's the E shape that we moved up to the position where the bar chord would be. We added the 7th, and that's the one. Same with the 4th position. If we lower the 7th, which is in the bass this time, we get that one, and I use this fingering for that. So it's a flat 7th, 3rd, the 5th, and the root. So for the dominant, we found a few more interesting shapes. A few that we sort of recognize from our bar chord. And this one is a very nice and handy shape as well, but I do like this one. It's my favorite. It all started from this bar chord. We lowered the 7th, we lowered the 7th again to get a dominant. We moved everything one step up in the chord ladder and we found some new voicings. Now if we have this dominant 7th and we lower the 3rd, we get a minor chord. Let's do the same with the other positions. This was our dominant 7th. Remember we started from the major 7th, dominant 7th. Now we're lowering the 3rd, which is in the bass. And I love this voicing. This is C minor 7. Who'd have thought? And if you already know this, I mean, this is a different thing. So this is our dominant 7th with the E shape. We lower the 3rd. Very nice voicing. This is our dominant 7th. Fingering 4. Let's lower the 3rd. The 3rd is here. Lower that one there, and we get this. And there your root is on the top, well, the 2nd string up, the B string, which for most people is an easy string to remember the notes on. So if you remember the root, it is there. E minor 7 is there, F minor 7, G minor 7, A minor 7. So we find a few more voicings there for the C minor. If we lower the 5th, we're still in the 1st position. If we lower the 5th, we get a C half diminished. I use this fingering because it's easier for me, but this one, it's just as good. If we repeat the process, this is our C minor. We're lowering the 5th, which is there, on that string. We're lowering the G to G flat. You get this lovely voicing. If you do the same with this voicing, lowering the 5th. So these are quite, they feel sort of similar in the way that you play them. But I mean, this compared to this, to me is much more celestial. Same with this one, we had this one, minor, lowering the 5th. I'm sure you can't see this properly with this camera, but it's more about the approach than about the fingers, because you don't have to remember the fingers if you using this approach. So now from this simple bar chord, we found 3 new voicings for major, dominant, minor, and half diminished. Now using the same technique, you can find any chord you want and then shift it up through these 4 sets of voicings. I mean, if you want to, if you're a Lydian chord, you might not find this easy to be transposed to position number 2, because that G needs to go to an F sharp, which is there, which is for me really difficult. But if you look at a different voicing, like the first major 7 on the 3rd fingering, it's easier to lower the 5th there, because you can do this. Now this might sound a bit much in the whole thing, but I'm just trying to explain you the approach. So that's how I look at ways of finding new voicings for chords. Now to end, we've now done this with the notes or with the strings 5, 4, 3 and 2, the middle 4 strings. You can do the same thing with voicings that start on the lower string. So if you would look at C major 7 in this voicing, so you got lower string, the E, and then you skip the A and you continue on the D, the G and the B. You can start the whole process over again. Major, dominant, minor, minor flat 5, and then do the same technique. You just move everything up a step in the chord ladder and you're off again for a total new journey of chords. And you could do this with the top 4 strings, which will give you another 4 sets of voicings that you can alter to your liking. And then you can do the same thing by using the top 3 strings and the 4th string, the A string, and that will give you 4 sets of voicings for every chord again. And then you can use anything you want. The first, the second, like a very open voicing, using strings E, A, B and E. I mean, whatever you want. If you find a voicing that you really like, you can start moving your chord tones up and down the chord ladder and come up with different voicings by just thinking about the approach and not by remembering shapes with your fingers, because that might get really difficult in the end. And then if you decide like, oh, this is a voicing I really like, and there's a few that I really like from these voicings, I then go through jazz standards and I decide whenever I see diminished or half diminished chord, I will use that shape, and then practice that for weeks and weeks on end, just using that shape all the time until it's in your fingers, and then choose another one and do that again. Next step up, but that will be in a later video, is going from one chord to the next, like a 2-5. There are some shapes that are really made for progression from 2-5 to 1, and with some clever thinking you can find relatively easy ways to go from a 2 to a 5 to a 1. And my approach is always like, with the least possible effort, to go from one to the next, so that I can sort of think in easy block positions when I see changes going past, especially when they are really fast. Then you don't want to go from there to there. I just want to stay in the same region and move from 2 to 5 to 1 without too much thinking and too much movement in my fingers. There you go. That was my video about finding new shapes for chords that you already know. Alright, thank you. See you. Bye.